Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to dive right in and break down the incredibly complex blueprints of the caste system. We'll explore its historical rigidity, its surprising modern fluidity, and unpack exactly how a system that spans thousands of years actually functions on the ground today. Now, I want you to imagine something for a second. What if your job, your future spouse, even something as simple as who you could accept a glass of water from, was decided the very moment you were born? Crazy, right? We aren't just talking about class here. We're talking about a system where your entire life's trajectory is essentially locked in from day one. So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the blueprint of caste, move into hierarchy and segregation, look at the British colonial impact, explore modern forces of change, and finally wrap up with shifting social ladders. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the blueprint of caste. You see, while it originally started as a Hindu institution, caste actually acts as a regional societal blueprint. It influences so many different communities, including Muslims, Christians, and Sikhs. It's basically a hereditary way of life. And it isn't just about passing down a specific job through your family tree. It's heavily rooted in some really intense cultural ideals of purity and contamination. Because caste isn't just one single rule. It's this incredibly complex web of interconnected features that dictate your entire subculture. Think of it like invisible ropes binding society. A person's status, it doesn't magically change even if they make a ton of money or get a PhD. Society is highly segmented based on these completely inescapable core pillars. Moving on to Section 2, hierarchy, marriage, and segregation. So picture a really rigid pyramid of superiority and inferiority. You've got clear, unquestioned authority at the very top, severe oppression at the absolute bottom, and then you have these intermediate castes stuck in a murky middle ground, where their relative positions aren't always crystal clear. Now, what is the superglue holding this entire pyramid together? It's something called endogamy. This is the extremely strict rule of marrying only within your specific caste or subcaste. And look, if you break this rule, you don't just get a slap on the wrist. You are facing total social exclusion and banishment. It makes upward mobility through marriage practically impossible. To give you an idea of how intense this gets, our source material notes that a high caste man may not touch a low caste man, let alone accept cooked food and water from him. It's a very visceral rule, isn't it? It perfectly highlights the harsh reality of the concept of pollution, which acts as a religious obligation or dharma used to enforce really strict physical and social distance. And you know, these rules weren't just theoretical ideas floating around. They physically shaped the world, especially down south in Marathi, Telugu, and Kannada-speaking regions. Impure castes were literally forced to live on the outskirts of the villages. This architectural segregation is just a striking physical proof of the social limitations built right into the geography. Okay, let's pivot a bit and look at Section 3, the British colonial impact. When the British arrived, it caused a massive head-on collision between Indian faiths and the Christianity that essentially propped up the British Empire. You had colonial missionaries aggressively targeting local beliefs, trying desperately to untangle what they viewed as mystical myths from what they considered true religion. So, faced with this overwhelming diversity, what did the British do? Well, they basically lumped a hugely varied set of mystical practices into one giant, oversimplified box and called it Hinduism. They grouped all these identities together not because it made any internal sense, but simply because they didn't neatly fit into the major world religions the British already knew. But here is the real kicker, the great irony of it all. Rather than dismantling this hierarchy, these indifferent colonial masters actually leaned right into it. By officially categorizing and recording the caste system for political control, the British ended up entrenching these rules even deeper into the administrative fabric of India. Which brings us to Section 4, modern forces of change. Now, even ancient stone tablets eventually crack under enough modern pressure, right? Westernization, bringing things like egalitarianism and rational education, has severely weakened those traditional power structures. At the same time, secularization is fundamentally overwriting those old, rigid ideas of purity and contamination. Just think about the difference between a segregated village and a modern factory floor. Historically, you had to maintain strict physical distances, but industrialization completely forces occupational mobility. When people move to urban tech hubs or factories for work, that traditional fixity just vanishes. A Brahmin and a Shudra simply have to work side by side to get the job done. And modern transportation? It makes the old rules literally laughable. Try to imagine enforcing untouchability on a packed rush hour public bus. The sheer practicality of mass transit, where everybody just has to sit shoulder to shoulder regardless of their background, makes caste segregation logistically impossible and totally unworkable. Plus, the government officially stepped in to accelerate this shift. In the post-independence era, we saw massive legal renovations, like the Untouchability Offenses Act of 1955. This set forth strict, real-world penalties for untouchable behavior, actively pushing for human equality and the economic protection of oppressed groups. Let's wrap things up with Section 5, Shifting Social Ladders. This brings us to a truly fascinating concept coined by sociologist M.N. Srinivas, called Sanskritization. Basically, instead of just waiting around for the system to change, disadvantaged lower castes or tribes deliberately imitate the cultural practices, traditions, and even diets of the upper castes. They do this to try and pull themselves up the rungs and gain respect within the existing hierarchy. But what's really wild is that we are now seeing mobility happening in both directions. While lower castes are adopting orthodox lifestyles to move up, we're simultaneously seeing de-Sanskritization. Upper castes, like Brahmins, are actively shedding traditional restrictions, like starting to consume meat or alcohol. It's fundamentally blurring the cultural landscape from both ends. So we've seen just how deeply entrenched these societal blueprints were, and we've looked at the massive modern forces actively rewriting them today. I want to leave you with this question to chew on as we wrap up our explainer. As rapid urbanization and industrialization continue to blur the lines of purity and occupation, how much longer can this ancient architecture truly survive? Keep questioning the world around you, and thanks so much for joining me.